Hey y'all, it's Ashley Bookishrealm, and I know, I'm so late with this video. This was supposed to happen at the beginning of the month, and yet here we are at the end of the month, and I'm just now getting this up because it's a lot to be said about me, but I would like to point out that at least I'm making an effort, and it's going up at all. Hey y'all, so as you can see from the title of this video, today I'm going to be talking about my best and worst books of Q1, which will cover January, February, and March. I was going to provide some statistics, but I am not finished adding stuff to my tracker for the year. I'm super behind on that. I've just been really busy, so I said I'm not going to stress about coming up with the data. I will make sure that I have that for the second quarter, which of course a lot of people end up doing the mid-year book freakout tag during that time period, and so I will provide you with better statistics during that point that we reach that. Because let's be honest here, okay? Like it's a lot. So I can tell you a couple of things and hope and pray that my phone doesn't die in the process. But if we're talking about just the number of books that I've read so far this year, I'm somewhere probably close to 160 so far for the year. But that's also including April, so that's not really a super accurate number. I think probably January, February, March, we're probably looking at anywhere between like 120 to 125 for those 3 months. But really good pacing going on. I'm reading all over the place, I can say that, which is what I'm enjoying in terms of picking up different genres, picking up different age demographics, and just kind of reading whatever I want to read. And that's just been the highlight of the year so far. So I have about 6 books that have disappointed me, and I say worse, but I'm going to say worse and most disappointing because there were some books that I was looking forward to that didn't really deliver, and so I kind of lumped those into one group. I will say that it was difficult coming up with a best list because I've read some really great stuff this year. I narrowed it down to 10. I don't know what I'm going to do for the end of this year because I don't know what it is about what I've been reading this year, but it's really been some really great books this year. So we're going to start off with the bad first because I always like to end these types of videos on a positive note. I don't like to end them on a negative note. So let's get the trash talking out the way first. All right, so the first one that we have on this list is So Help Me God. And so I have started doing something a little differently where I've been trying to do at least attempting to do weekly wrap-ups. Some months have been better than others, but most of these have been covered in a weekly wrap-up, so I will leave the playlist for those weekly wrap-ups in the card symbol above if you would like to check those out. But the first one that we have on the list is So Help Me God. So if you did not know, I have a tendency to read a lot of political nonfiction. I do not read political nonfiction for views or for the opportunity to trash books. It's not what it is. If you've been a part of my channel for any period of time, you know that I read political nonfiction and I read from both sides of the aisle just to get a better view from everyone, and that way when I go into situations where I'm discussing certain things, I have the lens of both parties. And so there's that. So of course I found out that Pence was writing a memoir of sorts, very lengthy, over 500 pages, and it was everything that I expected it to be. I was hoping that this would be the opportunity for him to kind of stand up for himself a little bit in terms of his relationship with Trump, but unfortunately that was not the case. I feel like there was some very emotional and interesting elements in reference to his relationship with Trump. I think he did feel this level of betrayal, but he did not want to say that. I think that there was a lot of still kind of covering for him in some ways, which is interesting considering if you are following what's going on in the news right now, then you know that Pence just recently testified. So there's that. So there's all of that, but I did not enjoy this whatsoever, which is kind of interesting because I also read Tim Scott's memoir this year. I actually read them very close together, and there were parts of Tim Scott's memoir that I could appreciate. I still think that we fundamentally disagree on a lot of things, but Pence and I, there was no kind of like me seeing where he was coming from. I just didn't really appreciate him feeding into this, what is now co-opted term of woke ideology, because that's not where the term originated. It has essentially been co-opted and is now being used as a slur. So essentially there just was like nothing that I really cared for when it came to Pence's book. There were no points in which I was like, oh, okay, I can see where you're coming from. I can understand that perspective. Even if I don't necessarily agree with it, there was none of that. There was none of that. It was very much so, it read like right-wing media propaganda. And so I just, it just wasn't, I tried. I did finish it, but it was not for me. The next one that I have on this list is not one that I'm going to talk about very much, because I've done an entire reading vlog for it, which I will link in the card symbol above. I have been working on every other month doing a banned book diary. I have one that I'm currently working on right now, but this was the first one that I did, and it's where I select a banned book or a challenge book and I read it and discuss a little bit about banned books and challenges as they are currently happening in the United States. And I went with that one because it's one that I own, and I was like, okay, let's just go with it. It follows a girl by the name of Angie who is fat, and it follows up basically what happens in her life post her sister going missing in action. She's in the military in the Iraq War. It follows up her attempted suicide, and I just don't like the voice that this was written in. I am a fat, plus size, thick, overweight, however you want to call it, because I'm just at the point where I think descriptors are not really going to faze me. And granted, this is a YA book that was written at this point maybe like 10 years ago. But the voice in which it was written, Angie hyper fixates on her weight to a point that there's no growth, and I just didn't like that. For one of the first books to include plus size fat representation in young adult, it's one of the first. This is before Julie Murphy stepped on the scene. I thought the representation was not that great. And I thought that the character development was not that great. I think that Angie internalizes her weight to a point that she is accepting of other people calling her Fat Angie. And granted, I understand like a character being in one place and then growing from that and developing into more, but I just didn't think that we got the development that we needed. There were some interesting characterizations of AAVE, which was, it was called urban slang. So it was just a couple of things where I was like, yeah, this is just not working for me. And I was more than willing and happy to discuss why the book was banned and challenged and why it shouldn't have been banned or challenged. And I also state in these videos that just because I pick it for video is not a guarantee that I'm actually going to enjoy it. But it is to advocate and bring awareness to the fact that just because I don't enjoy a book doesn't mean that it shouldn't be accessible to other people. So unfortunately for my first challenge, it was not one that I ended up enjoying at all. The next one is one that caused me a lot of controversy, which is amazing. So it is a Black Queen. I read this as I think an ALC. I had an advanced listening copy of this one through Libro FM, and I was interested in it. It definitely focuses on race relations in the South, and oh gosh, y'all. So the book itself is supposed to be about the fact that we have this prom queen who is like the first Black prom queen in this town that has a lot of heightened racial tensions. And the prom queen ends up dead, and so it's told from two perspectives, where we have a black girl and a white girl, and the assumption is that the white girl possibly could be behind it because she is kind of like a prom queen legacy. Her mother was a prom queen, her sister was, her grandmother was, and so out of anger, the assumption is that she would have killed this girl because she was taking the spotlight from her. First of all, it's supposed to be like a thriller. You know who the killer is before you even reach 50% of the way through. It is extremely obvious who the killer is. I think that this is a book that took our white main character. This is supposed to be about a black girl that was killed and is connected to racial tensions in this community, but we center the narrative of a white girl and how she is learning how to not be racist anymore. If that's what the book was going to be about, then that's what the book should have been about. I don't think it was fair to kind of develop the story in which we are led to believe that it's going to center this black girl and her experience when, you know, it's told in dual perspective. But it got to a point where even with our black main character, I forgot why she was even relevant to the story, why she was there. I think that it felt as though she was added to the story just for the sake of being added to the story, to say that we had a black main character, because it very much so focused on our white main character and her journey in learning that racism is bad. And quite honestly, I didn't want that. I didn't need that. I didn't want to read about that. I feel like there were elements that were thrown in at the end of the book simply for shock value, and it just was not an enjoyable read for me. Now, a couple of you are probably like, well, why did this book cause you controversy? Well, because somebody plagiarized my review for this, and so it turned this whole huge thing where they claimed I was calling them out, and they didn't plagiarize my review, which they in fact did copy and paste parts of my review and put it on their review, which I think is just absolutely bizarre. I'm just trying to say bizarre and absurd at the same time, because at the end of the day, it's not like we get paid to review, so it's not like you're making money off of copying my review. It's just very, very strange. I don't know. The next one that I have on this list is Spare, which I did a whole review on Spare, and I'm gonna link that in the card symbol above as well. Yeah, Spare was Spare. It is what it is. It was an unfortunate experience for me. I did not enjoy it at all. I think that there's a lot of unchecked privilege in that book, a lot of growth that still needs to happen on his end, and it's not there. And part of me just wish he would have taken the opportunity to maybe write this book after, you know, he got more life experience. And it's not for me to determine when someone should or should not. That's just my personal opinion. But yeah, have a full review of that one, and you can hear detail bit by bit why I was not a fan of that one. And the last one that I have on this list is Peter Pan. I also have a full review on Peter Pan, where I have been taking the opportunity to revisit some children's classics and determining like whether the content in these books is problematic. I did one for Little House in the Big Woods, which is the first book in the Little House on the Prairie series, and the next one that I decided to do was Peter Pan. And not only do I feel like there are issues with Peter Pan, granted, yes, I know when it was written, but it is dry. Peter Pan is the most horrendous protagonist that I have read in a children's book in a very long time. He's not a likable character, and I did not enjoy it at all, y'all. I did not enjoy it, and I know a lot of people really do like Peter Pan, but it's not for me. From him just being unlikable, the reference to Native American and Indigenous people, the misogyny, the strong emphasis on gender roles, I could not in good faith give that book to my child and be like, here, you should read this and enjoy it. And so in that video, you'll hear me talk a little bit about that, as well as some recommendations for books to read in tandem with, or if you are interested in Peter Pan without the actual foolishness that is Peter Pan, I also give some recommendations of books that you could read in its place. But I always like to say in place of, also in tandem of, just in case you do want to read it, like read what you want to read. I just found out this year that Peter Pan was not working for sis. Okay? All right. Yeah, it wasn't working for me. All right. So let's dive into the books that I absolutely adored and loved this year. I'm not going to spend forever on each one of these books because I will, oh my gosh, y'all, I will be here for an extremely long time and I cannot afford to be here for an extremely long time. So the first one that I have is The Empress of Salt and Fortune. Am I late to the game? Absolutely. Should I have read this book before I read it for the Trans Rights Readathon? Absolutely, but I didn't, and here we are. It was amazing. I absolutely enjoyed it. I have a whole vlog where I talk about the Empress of Salt and Fortune, which I will link that vlog in the card symbol above. It was great. I think that the storytelling for me was phenomenal because I would not have expected that much, I think, character development, so much commentary on the role of women, difference in classes, the importance of oral storytelling. I don't think I would have expected that. Like looking at that novella, I was like, there's no way I would have expected to get that out of 100+ pages. I mean, we're talking 115, 120 max. And it was so well written. The world building, the character development, the plot, the pacing, everything was just on point. And it just shocked me because I read quite a bit of novellas, and I'm not saying that I haven't read ones that are good, but I think that what was done with this one is exceptional. Something that you don't see all the time. And so I really, really appreciated it. I still need to finish the rest of the series because I know that the 4th one in the series comes out this year. Don't worry, I will be picking it up. The next one that I have is Reggie and Delilah's Year of Falling. Now, this is my first book by Elise Bryant, and I am excited to read the rest of their works. But this one was really, really good. It literally is following 2 characters who are falling in love with each other over the course of a year. And it is about them like kind of having these weird, almost universe working together to have them meeting at these moments until they take control and they start having these moments. It was just done so nicely. I think just the various topics that we were getting between our heroine, she is biracial but identifies as Black, and there's great commentary on Black women who are interested in like the punk scene and how Black women are capable and should be welcomed in that environment, but quite often there's this assumption that we aren't. And then dealing with our hero, there was just also this perception of, you know, Black guy playing D&D, and he, oh gosh, he loves it, but he also is quick to acknowledge the issues, the racism that exists in this world that is D&D. And you know, he writes about it, and both of them have disabilities. A disability representation was really, really well thought through and was written with a lot of care and sensitivity. I also appreciated the fact that the pacing of this was really, really good, because I think sometimes with young adult, the romance happens so quickly that our characters don't really feel like they get a genuine amount of time to really get to know each other. And since these 2 characters are literally spending a year, and it doesn't feel rushed, because granted, this book is 350, 400 pages max. It doesn't feel like we're rushing through a year. I think the way that Bryant paces the book, it feels like we're gradually moving through this year, and they're getting to know each other and the ins and outs. And of course they have, you know, the point where they're like, there's issues, there's a problem, and you know, they have to work through it. But it felt very real for that age group, and the writing was immaculate, just beautiful. I had so much fun with that one. I took, like I've been saying, I've been really slowing down on listening to my audiobooks speed wise, and so just taking my time and listening to that one was just enjoyable as well. Next one I have is The Mountains Sing. Now this one I believe was a recommendation that I got from Yanni a while ago, and I found a copy of this one on Any Play I listened to it. It is following kind of like this split narrative of a young girl and her grandmother who are living during the Vietnam War. This one has a lot of content warnings attached to it, but beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. This was not an easy read for me in terms of the content and the violence that is explicitly displayed in this book, but at the end of the day, I think that it's something that's needed because it's very true to the life experiences of other people. And so while I think for me, I have to think about, okay, well, this is hard for me to read. What about the people who actually had to live through these experiences? And so it humbles me a lot when I'm able to kind of walk into someone else's experiences. This is the author's first book that is written in English. She is from Vietnam. And I think just the beautiful nature of the back and forth between the grandmother and the grandchild's perspectives was really interesting, because she's watching her grow while the child is trying to figure out like her grandmother and her mother. Her mother definitely is going through a lot in terms of what's been happening in Vietnam. Her father is not present because of the Vietnam War, and it's not exactly what I would call like one of those books that's like a genealogy based book, kind of like think like a Pachinko or Homegoing by Ya Jesse. It's not quite that, but I do say, like, if you like Homegoing or Pachinko, you would appreciate the style in which this one is told. The author had another one that just released, I believe, this past month or in March, and you best believe I'm finna get my hands on it, because the writing alone is just poetic, and I loved hearing hearing Vietnamese while listening to the audiobook, because I always feel whenever I hear Vietnamese, it's so poetic. And I don't know if that necessarily makes sense to a lot of people whenever I say that, but I've never experienced a language that literally sounds like poetry when it's being spoken. So I'm so glad that I made the decision to listen to it on audio. The next one that I have on my list is An American Story. This is a picture book, of course. I was going to include a picture book on this one. And it's by Kwame Alexander, who always has a way of like destroying my heart. And Derek Coulter is the illustrator behind this one, and it was beautiful. There's so many different artistic elements mixed into this that I think a lot of people will appreciate. I think that the story itself is about how difficult it can be to teach American history when you are looking at it from a thorough lens. So having a teacher teach about slavery and not really knowing how to handle that, how to share that painful legacy of America with a group of students, especially now when teaching about slavery is considered critical race theory, which is mind-boggling to me. I think at this point people will pull anything out of their behinds to, I don't know why people do the things that they do anymore, but I think that Kwame was pulling from his own experience of his child having to go through the educational system and teachers being nervous themselves of like, well, I don't know, like, how do you teach children about slavery? Like, how much do you reveal, and, you know, how do you make sure that you're not isolating or singling out the black kids in your class as if they should be, you know, the spokespeople for all the black children in the world? It's a very complicated thing to consider, although very, very necessary. And it is a part of the American story, so you can't leave it out. But the question is, how do you incorporate it in a way that is accessible for children of all ages? But I mean, it's Kwame Alexander, so it's kind of like I expect nothing less than pure amazing things from him. The next one that I have is Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute, and I Was excited for this. This is Talia Hibbert's first foray into young adult, and I was excited but also nervous because I am seeing some authors go both ways and it doesn't always work out. And I think that with this specific line, this is Nicola and David Yoon's imprint, and so this was the first book that they were releasing from that imprint. There's another one out now, please don't ask me to name it. It's the historical romance that's kind of like Monte Cristo-esque type of thing by Amelia Howard, I believe. I believe that's their name. I could be wrong though, but either way, we're here to talk about this book. I really enjoyed this one. It was great. It is two friends who are no longer friends. They grew apart. They used to be super, super close. And it's them essentially falling in love with each other based off of a wilderness challenge that our heroine is competing in for scholarship money. And then our hero is like, well, I'm going to compete too. And so they're kind of meshed together where they have to kind of figure out their feelings for each other. And it was beautiful. Our hero is like the sunshine on a cloudy day. He's like that burst of joyful energy that you need in your life. He was amazing, and I loved our heroine, do not get me wrong, but he was just such a cinnamon roll. He was just a sweetheart. Their banter is amazing. I love that they were forced into a situation where they had to address what impacted their relationship from the beginning. There's great disability rep, there is bisexual representation, and I think that Talia Hibbert's writing is just kind of one of those areas where you just can't go wrong. It's always so fluid, engaging. It's, I don't want to like energetic and bright. I don't know if those have ever been like ways that people have described writing, but her writing definitely to me is very energetic. It's bright, it's engaging. It makes you want to continue to read, and when the story's over, you want to pick up something else by her. I think that that just is an important feature of a writer. The next one that we have on this list is We Deserve Monuments by Jas Hammond. I don't even have the word to describe how beautiful this book is. This book is going to stay on my list for top books of 2023, hands down. When I make this video next year, Jas will be on this list, because I think that there are times, moments in our life where books just come to us at a perfect time, and this one came to me at the perfect time, and it came when I needed it and didn't even realize that I needed it. So it focuses on a young girl who is headed to she's headed to her family's hometown. They moved up north, and so she hasn't been there in a very, very long time, so she moves down south. She goes back down south with her mom and her dad, and she's visiting her grandmother who is ill. And there's a lot of healing that needs to happen between mother and daughter on both ends, and grandmother to granddaughter, and it was absolutely beautiful. It's a lot about grieving, making up for lost time, realizing that forever is not promised, nor is it guaranteed. And at the moment, I was coming to terms with the fact that I am losing a grandparent. She is dying. And so I think I just needed that, because things haven't been perfect. Things still aren't perfect, but my time is kind of coming to an end with her. And so, and I hate getting so emotional talking about this, which is why I think this book is always going to be like a top book for me, because the disconnect that happens when family members have issues, it causes rifts that I think everyone in the family feels. It breaks connections, it takes time away that you just can't get back. And so I have lost a lot of time, and a part of me, like our main character, you realize that you're never going to get that time back. And so for her, the moment that she has with her grandmother to heal, to encourage her mother to heal, it's just that moment, and that's all that they have. And I think that it's just a beautiful and touching book that really does such a great job tackling grief. And I needed that book, and I still need that book now. Actually, I want to reread that book because I still need it, because while I don't know how much time I have left, I know that it's not a lot. So there's that. Sorry to get emotional, but that book is very near and dear to my heart. The next one I have is Notes of a Native Son. I finally read James Baldwin, thanks to Erica from The Broken Spine. This was fantastic. This is not a perfect book. This is a essay collection that compiles Baldwin's thoughts and feelings about a number of different things. And I loved it. I think that you can kind of tell that Baldwin was still trying to find his voice in his writing style and a few of the essays, and some of them were overly verbose. I think that some things could have been stated in simpler terms, but at its core, in the meat of these essays, his commentary on portrayal of Black people in media, the Black experience in America, the Black experience overseas, it's like, it just doesn't get any better than that. And so I ate it up, y'all. I loved it. I think out of that collection, my favorite moments, some of my favorite moments were Baldwin's commentary on Uncle Tom's Cabin was very interesting. Also Native Son, which I was not anticipating. I actually just checked out Native Son by Richard Wright because of the commentary that Baldwin made on it. I really enjoyed his discussion about his experiences in Paris and what it's like when two Black people meet each other or engage on foreign soil, and how our experiences here in the US impact how we engage with each other overseas. It was just brilliant. I mean, I expect nothing else. He's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant human, and I'm excited to continue forward and read the rest of his bibliography up until next year. It's a project that I'm doing with Erica and Josh, and I actually am about to read Go Tell It on the Mountain in the next couple days. So there's that. After that, I have Chloe and the Kaishao Boys. This was like almost a perfect book for me. I really, really enjoyed this book. It had a touch of like humor, there was romance, there was like exploration of family dynamics, but it follows Chloe, who has lived in the Philippines. Her parents were living together, but they ended up splitting up because her mom just didn't feel she didn't feel at home, and her home was the US. That's what she was used to. So they end up splitting up. She goes to the US, and Chloe stays in the Philippines with her dad. And she loves it, but she's going to school. She's decided that she wants to go to college, and she gets into college in the United States. And so she's having to kind of deal with this impact that that's going to have on her relationship with both her mother and her father. And her father is organizing these kaishaos, which is kind of like, you know, like setting up a date with these guys in order, well, you know what? I don't even want to tell you. I don't want to tell you. Because that's the fun of reading it and understanding why her father did what he did. That's what makes this such an interesting and fascinating book. I really like that there was this, like I said, exploration of romance, but a good portion of it was more so about family dynamics and Chloe learning to accept herself and love herself and be okay with just her, which I think is really, really important for teenagers to see. And there was also this interesting conversation about being both Chinese and Filipino, and I did not know how that experience was for people who have that intersection of being both Chinese and Filipino, and how that impacts them, and just the expectations and cultural dynamics that comes with that. It was very, very fascinating. Almost a perfect book. I just did not like all the pop culture references because it dates a book so quickly, and like Chloe and her best friend are obsessed with Beyonce, which whatever, like I'm not a part of the Beehive. Like no, it's not like I dislike Beyonce, I don't listen to music, but I'm, you know, not a super fan, and like they are, and I was just like, like it's okay for a couple of mentions, but the consistent, it just is too much. Okay, the second to last one that's on this list is Red, White, and Whole, which I've had that one on my shelf for a very long time, and I decided to read it for middle grade March. It's a Newbery Honor Medal. It's a Newbery Honor winner. And so I should have known that this was going to be a difficult book for me to read. But do you think that I took that into consideration when I picked the book up? Absolutely not. But it takes place in the 80s, and it follows our main character, who is American Indian, and she is struggling with balancing between those two cultures, her Indian family and living in America, and wanting to do everything else that she sees her friends doing. And she has a very tough relationship with her mother, as I think a lot of us as young girls, we do have, you know, interesting relationship dynamics with our moms, and she has to come to appreciate her mom in a lot of ways because some things happen, and she grows to look at that relationship dynamic very differently. I think that just the cultural elements of this were really interesting. The writing, it's written in free verse. I loved just hearing about what it means to kind of be, I love stories that talk about what it means to be at the crossroads of two cultures, clearly Chloe and the Kai Shao boys, but I love books that talk about being at the crossroads of two identities and how that impacts an individual. But this one definitely does a great job tackling grief and just once again appreciating family and the moments that you have them, and valuing relationships. It was beautiful. It was just beautiful. Such a beautiful book. And the last one that I have on this list is another picture book, and this is Kappa Imayu, which I'm probably saying wrong, but I've listened to this tons and tons of times, and I'm sure I'm pretty close. This is a picture book that actually was based on the short film. So if you have the opportunity, please check out the short film. It is absolutely amazing. You can watch it here on YouTube. And oh my goodness, this is a picture book that is, first of all, it's bilingual, which I appreciate it. But it also shows the impact of colonization, and how through colonization, which some people don't really, I think, understand how impactful it can be, where people's whole identities and histories and cultural traditions and practices can be lost. And this is about these 4 spirits that are neither male nor female. So this also won the Stonewall Book Award. I think it was in honor. And they come from Tahiti to Hawaii, and they bring all of these gifts to help the people of Hawaii, and they, as a token of appreciation, erect these 4 stones in their honor. But through colonization, tourism, not only is the story lost, but also the actual 4 stones themselves are lost. And so we get to see how they're lost, and then how these cultural traditions, understanding these cultural traditions, understanding the importance of passing on, like, oral storytelling. Once again, this is another story where I felt like oral storytelling is a huge part of the narrative. Understanding its importance and its impact, and respecting and helping maintain cultures that have been impacted by colonization. It is beautiful. One of the most beautiful picture books that I've read. I highly, y'all, please watch that video because, like I said, it's bilingual, but of course I am not a native speaker, so I would not know how to pronounce half the things that I saw in that book. But listening to it, oh my gosh, it was beautiful. It was so beautiful. And the illustrations and just the music in the back, it was just, oh, be still my heart. It was amazing. All right, y'all, so those are the best and worst books of quarter one. I hope you all have enjoyed. In the comments below, let me know what your best and worst books of the first quarter were. If you have stats, let me know what your stats were. Let me know how many books you've read. As always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button and the bell for notifications. If you're looking to follow me on social media or support this channel via Patreon, links will be down in the description box below, and I'll be back with another video soon. Bye.